Before we begin with the story, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It helps us know what kind of content you guys like the most and what we need to improve on. Now let's begin. I never thought I'd fight my way out of a cult, but there I was, battling a bunch of brainwashed zealots just to save my own skin. It all started innocently enough. I'd recently moved to this quiet town in the middle of nowhere, looking for a fresh start after my divorce. Life was lonely, and making friends wasn't easy. Then I met David. He was charismatic, friendly, and seemed genuinely interested in helping me out. He introduced me to his community, a group of people who met regularly to discuss life, philosophy, and self-improvement. They called themselves the Enlightened Path. At first it was great. Everyone was so welcoming. We'd have these deep, meaningful conversations, and I felt like I was finally part of something bigger than myself. David was at the center of it all, and he had this way of making you feel like he had all the answers. But over time, things started to get weird. David's teachings grew darker, more controlling. He began talking about an upcoming apocalypse and how only those who followed him would be saved. The community's activities became more secretive, and members were encouraged to cut ties with outsiders, including family and friends. One night, I overheard a conversation between David and his inner circle. They were discussing a final test for new members. The details were vague, but it sounded dangerous. My gut told me I had to get out. But leaving wasn't easy. Members who tried to leave were shunned, sometimes even threatened. I began to quietly make plans. I started stashing supplies and money in a hidden spot in my car. I kept my head down and pretended to go along with everything, all while looking for a chance to escape. I knew I had to be careful. If they caught wind of my plan, I didn't know what they'd do. My chance came one night during a community gathering. David was droning on about purification and enlightenment when I noticed a back door left ajar. It led to the storage room, which had a side exit. My heart pounded as I inched my way toward it, trying not to draw attention. Just as I reached the door, someone grabbed my arm. It was Tom, one of David's right-hand men. His grip was ironclad, and he looked at me with a mix of suspicion and anger. "Where do you think you're going?" he growled. I panicked. Without thinking, I swung my free hand and punched him square in the jaw. He staggered back, more surprised than hurt. I bolted through the door, my heart racing, adrenaline pumping. I could hear shouts behind me as others realized what was happening. I sprinted to my car, fumbling with the keys. Just as I got the door open, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun around, swinging my fist wildly. It connected with someone's nose, and they fell back, blood pouring from their face. I jumped into the car, started the engine, and tore out of there like a bat out of hell. As I sped down the dark, empty road, I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights chasing me. But there was nothing. The road stretched out before me, dark and lonely, but it felt like freedom. I drove for hours, not daring to stop until I was far, far away from that place. Eventually, I pulled into a motel parking lot, exhausted and shaking. I checked into a room and locked the door, finally allowing myself to breathe. The next few days were a blur. I contacted the authorities, telling them everything I knew. They seemed skeptical at first, but when they started investigating, they found enough to take action. The cult was raided, and David and his inner circle were arrested. I've tried to move on with my life, but it's not easy. I still have nightmares about that night, about the people I left behind. I wonder if they're okay, if they ever managed to escape David's grip. I hope they did. As for me, I'm trying to rebuild. I've moved to a new town, far away from that nightmare. I've started seeing a therapist to help deal with the trauma, and I've made a vow to never let myself be so easily manipulated again. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I can still hear David's voice, smooth and hypnotic, promising salvation. And I remember the fear, the adrenaline, and the desperate fight for my life. It's a part of me now, a scar that will never fully heal.